Simmons, is this the dagger? Oh, boom shakalaka! Game, series, Toronto has won!
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Swing. As always, it's your boy HK, and I'm joined by my co-host, that guy Owais. As always, we break down all that's happening in the NBA world, swinging around into the biggest news. And today we have especially big news as we are going to be joined by a very special guest later on in this podcast, very soon actually. But before we get to that, I do want to introduce our sponsor, which is, as always, Thrive Fantasy. And Thrive Fantasy is a daily fantasy sports app that's controlled via the website on thrivefantasy.com. And if today you sign up using the promo code SWING, you will get your deposit matched 100% up to $50 of deposit that you make. How it works? Very simple. Daily fantasy sports are done through props. So if you know how many points, is it over 25 or under 25? Do you know how many rebounds Joel Embiid is going to get tonight? Well, what you do is you make 10 picks on any given night, join contests to be able to win some big cash prizes. Thrive Fantasy. Sign up and prop up today. So, Owais, how's it going, man?
I'm excited for the game tonight, but not so good, if I'm honest. Not so good based off of what the heck happened Sunday night. Absolute tragedy. Hurt my soul. And we're not going to get into that much. How are you?
No. It hurts anytime you lose to what is essentially the worst team in the NBA. And it's one of those losses that just always sting because there were so many moments that you could have gone ahead and just taken that game away, but we didn't. In the end, though, we take another L. We have another big game now coming up against the Milwaukee Bucks, which is going to be tipping off in about 30 minutes. So we're going to definitely talk about that. But before we do, let's talk about our guest today. So Tahir Khan is joining us today on the Swing podcast. He is the varsity sports coordinator at the Sheridan College, where not only has he been a varsity level player himself, but he now coaches and coordinates all of the major sports that are happening at Sheridan College. So an incredible basketball mind, lots and lots of insight to the game, able to see it from ways that obviously us regular folk just can't. So I'm very excited to be able to have him on and really talk us through his insights. And more so than that, I also want to talk about his passion project, which we're going to spend a little bit of time on, because apart from being an incredible basketball fanatic, an incredible basketball player, he also is a purporter of the vegan lifestyle, which, has really shaped his life, has shaped his lifestyle choices, and really hangs around how he deals with day-to-day world. And he's shared that passion with everyone through his Instagram page at Offbeat Life. And I'm going to get Tahir to come on and talk to us a little bit about that, but it's him and his wife working together, giving us about all of that wellness content and really looking to improve the lives of those around everyone. So Tahir, thank you very much for joining. How are you doing today?
Hey guys, thanks for having me. I'm doing wonderful. Really excited to be on here. Thank you again.
Awesome. No, we're so excited to have you on. And as I was saying, it's one of those where, we all are about passion for sports, right? We obviously play cricket together, watch tons of basketball, interact all the time about the sport itself, because really it takes that little bit of extra passion to do everything that's required and that kind of thing. But you've just had so many roles in the sport. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about kind of your journey in basketball, how your life kind of was shaped by it?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great introduction in terms of like all of us share that passion in sport. We all really do. I'm, I guess, in that small group of people that have been very lucky to be working with sports also. Initially, it happened just through passion. So, I played sports like you, growing up playing a lot of sports, basketball, football, this, that. And then I started working at the YMCA, and I also started running these charity basketball tournaments with some friends. And my friend just called me up and said, "Hey, listen, why don't we run some charity basketball tournaments and we'll give the money to some, we'll pick some charity, we'll give it to them." I was like, okay. And we were 20 at the time, and we did this for 5 years, and it was awesome. 3-on-3 charity basketball tournaments. Winner got cash prizes. This is before any of this crazy basketball scene blew up. It was just a small on the street hustle we had just to raise money for charities and just to have fun with it. So that's what really got me into this field. And so I just followed that for a while. I was very fortunate that, playing at Sheridan, I also got to play for the coach and the athletic director. So after I was done, he said, hey, I remember you used to run those little tournaments and stuff like that. And you also have an athletic therapy background. So you understand sports and whatnot and administration and event management. How about working for us on that side? And I was like, okay, sure. And then here I am almost 13, 14 years later. I've worn many hats. I've worked as an athletic therapist with Canada Basketball, with Sheridan, recreation coordinator, sport coordinator, a whole bunch of things, but it's fun. It's amazing. I love it. And I'm super, super fortunate to have, the chance to work with sports.
That's awesome.
That's a beautiful journey. And I just wanted to ask you now, within that journey, we found out through the Offbeat Life page, which is a fantastic page for you guys watching. Definitely check it out. You converted from a meat eater to a vegan. Talk about that lifestyle change. What happened and how you feel about that change?
Oh man, look, it wasn't a conversion or anything like that. It's a bit strong. It's funny because that story was actually true, but the person who sent that message was actually 10 times more intense in person. And it just had me thinking, and I wanted to look into this, lifestyle a little bit more, and I learned a lot about it, and it really vibed with what I was about. I loved animals. I had these pets, and I was just like, oh my goodness, like this connection happened. So I made that change at the time only for ethical reasons at first. Even though I saw the health benefits, I read the studies on that, and the environmental benefits also, but at that time it was only ethical. And now, almost 6 years later, I am living proof now. Forget all the studies, all this, all that. I can actually share my living proof, that I feel amazing. I just turned 40. I do not feel like it. I play with Harris and other people. I don't move around like a 40-year-old. I don't feel the next way that day. When I go to sleep, I wake up. I don't feel sore. And a lot of my friends and people, my age, they're like, oh yeah, my body's always hurting. And I'm like, oh, I don't feel that. So I really attribute that to that vegan lifestyle. I feel amazing. I feel so great, and hopefully that continues. So I strongly recommend it for people to try it out at least. Give it a try, learn more about it, and if you're interested, check out Offbeat Life. We just released a beginner's guide to plant-based eating. I'm sure Harris will share that link somewhere. It's a free resource. It gives you reasons as to why you should try plant-based food. It also gives you about 10 recipes, I think it is. So free guide, check it out, and we're always available for support also.
No, absolutely. That's incredibly awesome. I have shared the link into their comments, so all of our viewers can definitely check out the Linktree link that I've gotten on there, which will have that entire guide that's been shared by Tahir. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. And no, he's absolutely right. He definitely doesn't move like a 40-year-old because he whoops my butt every time we go out on the basketball court. I know Owais still needs to give a chance and take a shot at T and Kevin, but let's see about that. But we do have Farouk Bhai who's joining us, who, by the way, is the reason we have this platform at SportsTrends to be able to go live.
Amazing.
You've got a question out here. So, this is definitely something that's an interesting topic, especially, being from a, meat-eating culture, a meat-eating religion, really, with holidays that are centered really around, the sacrifice, the consumption, the sharing, all of that. So, much as he's asking, is how hard is it to explain something like that you don't eat meat in these kind of scenarios?
Wow. Was not expecting that question.
Yeah, I know. It's thrown out there.
Farouk Bhai, thank you for your question. I do appreciate it. The honest truth is, this is something I've actually become aware of recently, this subject matter. I didn't really know a lot about this area here in regards to how it ties into the religion aspect, because I just did it because it just vibed for how I felt inside, right? When something feels right, it just feels right. I just did it. I didn't think about all the other things. But recently we made some friends, some amazing, amazing friends. We call them our vegan besties, and Zara and Sunny. And Zara works in this field also. She's vegan. She runs a charitable organization. And she is actually working on a documentary called Halalified. And that's looking at Islam and also trying to connect the religion aspect to the vegan aspect and how they match together. And a big reason behind the strong push for considering veganism for people who are Muslim is that the way farming is done now and how animals are treated in the factory farming system, which is responsible for, I don't know the exact percentage, but the vast majority of food, this would not align with how Islam teaches people to treat animals. There are very, very strict and clear rules on respecting animals and respecting the environment. So she actually taught me about that. And I was like, wow, I never thought about it from that perspective. But of course that makes sense, right? That animals are, should be treated well. And yes, you can eat them, but within very strict rules. And so the philosophy that the video is trying to show is that if you do not require them, number one, and science can prove that you don't, and two, if you know what's going into the industry, then why go that way? So that's kind of the angle that I would say. And there's much more. I can share many more resources and even connect you with Zara. I'm not an expert in that area, trust me. So, but thank you for the question. I hope I've helped you out a little bit.
Yeah, no, that's it's definitely a heavy topic per se as far as that's concerned, right? And I guess clearly your family members get that same intensity that gets dealt with when it comes to the vegan lifestyle. So
listen, with everybody else, the message is very, welcoming and very, hey, look, I tried it out, give it a try. With your family members, that all changes. You know how it is with family members. You go in and differently, and you can to them. Especially if they're your younger siblings, you let them have it for sure because they don't know any better, right?
Definitely just lay the law down, figure it out, and you know what? I'm definitely thinking better for you. No, it's definitely one of those, how you said, scenarios where everyone has a different way of going about how things are, right? And it also allows for just that variety as far as the diet's concerned. I mean, just from our own end, I mean, we run Baba's Bites on our side, right? And we're really working to expand the vegetarian side of that menu to give that extra bit of variety, not only just for those who don't wish to eat meat or don't want to or can't eat meat, but just because it gives a different palate. And I've seen the pictures that you have on your Offbeat Life page. Like some of that stuff looks absolutely sinful. It's just delicious looking, no doubt. So, I mean, it's definitely one of those where people who, even if they don't want to go full on vegan, definitely have the opportunity to have, let's say, no meat days or situations like that where they help almost regulate how much is going in a daily basis. And I mean, I do a little bit of that myself as well, either through intermittent fasting or just eating less in general. So it's great that you've got about doing that.
Yeah, I love it. And again, it's not an all or nothing proposition. Maybe it's one meal a day, one day a week, and Baba, and there's so many amazing, why limit yourself to the amazing meals that are out there in the world? There's so many different cuisines that are just so tasty. And I've had Baba's Bites. I've had the vegan biryani, and I was like, oh my goodness. It was, amazing. So yeah, that's it.
There you go. Well, obviously there's those who are always going to be for chicken biryani, and share if you like that. Baba's Bites offers the best chicken biryani you'll have. So definitely get on that when you get the opportunity. But much like, veganism is life, and we can talk about a little bit about vegan journey, so you can speak about that. But I do want to get into how ball is life as well. So let's answer this question here first, and then we'll get to go onto the swing.
I need a bunch of people who are just starting their vegan journey. Oh gosh. Okay. Research. Do your research before you jump in. Learn how to adjust your diet. Learn how to supplement, the things that you're eliminating. Learn how to substitute them. There are multiple substitutions because oftentimes you're like, okay, you know what? I want to try vegan food. And then you're like stranded in the sea on a boat without any oars. You need to have that understanding of the different types of foods that you can and should include, because there are a variety of things. So do some research first in preparation. Don't just jump in, do some preparation. That's why we made that guide. It was really for that, to help people not feel lost in the beginning. And there's so many other resources online, a billion other resources to have you ready before you jump in.
And that's awesome. And you know what? That's exactly it, right? And much like the link that has been shared, and once again, you can see it on the Facebook page for not only the Swing podcast, but SportsTrends as well. The Linktree guide is there. So, all the amazing work that Tahir has done with Anissa to put all of that together as a free resource for everyone, definitely go about and getting it there. So thanks very much for that. But much like that is a journey that is a lifelong journey, there is a season-long journey that's a bit of a sputter as far as the Toronto Raptors are concerned. Falling in just a very, very terrible fashion to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I didn't want to spend too much time on the full game highlights because, frankly, it just hurts. But where I did want to really focus on, and I know Owais can get a little bit into it as well, is what has been kind of our Achilles heel this entire season thus far, which is really that third quarter stretch, especially that second half of it where the starters are going to be resting and you're forced to go with, well, not really forced, but hoping to go with more of your bench unit to be able to keep yourselves going while waiting for those starters to come back. But much like it's been for much of the season here, Minnesota made the run that essentially killed us.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the problems that the Raptors have consistently had, this is not just a seasonal problem, just particularly this season, also had been a problem last year and the year before that, is just starting or ending quarters or the half in a way that, maintains a lead, right? Damage control, whatever the situation is, and we just have not been successful there. It's almost as if we have a lead, we blow it, and then have to fight our way back to win a game. And that trend comes from two things, as at least from what I've noticed. And I know you have your own sort of take of why this happens, but part of it is just defense. The defensive discipline that we have has been very inconsistent. So if you look at some of the teams that, kind of come back and make a run, it's generally because A, we're fouling too much, B, we're lost on the transition, or 3 is we're leaving guys open in the perimeter. Like the 3 ball from the corner and around those areas has just killed us this season. But then finally, we come back to this conversation about making buckets when they count. I'm not even going to go into what Pascal did that game. Because that hurt me. As a hooper, that hurts. That is literally barbecue chicken right there. Like Harris can make that layup. That tells you something, okay?
By the way, before we get into that, other than the layup itself, like that play, just the amount of hustle that Kyle Lowry has. I mean, we need to get back to that, right? This is a 112-107 game, 48 seconds. Kyle missed it, but look how he fights on the play to be able to get it back and get us again into that situation where we get this and one and get to a 2-point game again. So you're consistently getting it here, and as you said, you're playing catch up, but we have been really good in that fourth quarter once the starters come back to be able to kind of push the opposition into a scenario. And this is the kind of defense that's become, so insane for the Raptors. Look, you force Malik Beasley out into the turnover, and I'm just going to...
Pascal, there he goes, driving, tons of contact, and it rolls off of the iron.
You need to know.
Tell me about that. How does that happen?
Well, you heard Pascal. Oh my God, he couldn't believe it himself. At that level, an all-star, an NBA level guy, you just can't miss that. That's it. Simple as that.
Yeah, and I mean, I feel so bad for Pascal because he's been having a crazy good stretch. It's funny because he early on in the season had 2 situations already in which he either could have won the game or taken it to overtime. And in both of those scenarios, he didn't hit them. One of them was a tough turnaround jumper that he had against Golden State, which he didn't go. But the next one was very much like this, where it was a layup at the rim. Everything was set up. And the whole time I was watching, it was just like, man, why didn't you just dunk that or use the backboard? Like you had a clear situation. Why give any kind of potential for it to miss? But it's just it's one of those things, man.
I remember as a kid, even, when the coaches, whenever you would go play and you were learning the fundamentals, the coach would always say, if I see any of this finger roll type of shit, I'm going to slap you. And this is what you saw from Pascal. Pascal, of course, has only been playing, 10 years of basketball or something like that. So maybe his coaches didn't explain to him how the rules of basketball are, how the fundies work. No, it's just a tough one. The finger roll is always difficult because when you let it go, either it comes off short. You need to have a really good touch to have something like that go in. And I'm not making any excuse for Pascal because that should have gone in. But it's just almost like it's poetic in the way that his season's going, right? Just almost there. He's got it right, but it's just almost there. Just missing that one finishing thing. Something goes wrong. And honestly, that's the Raptors season. And Tahir, what do you think about how, especially from a player's perspective, like, if you're the guy, like what's the psyche like when you're missing shots like that? Athletes are generally very confident people, but they go through ruts. So can you kind of talk about the psychology of maybe what Pascal might be going through, or something similar that you've experienced?
Yeah, I mean, we're all humans at the end of the day, and so that is, especially at that level, everybody has skill in the NBA. You were the main person on your high school team, your state area, on your college team probably. So now you're playing against the best. You have what it takes to be here clearly. And most of it is inside of, between your ears. You have to be resilient. Without resilience, you cannot be a professional athlete. That's it. And he's had a rough go this year. He's had a rough go ever since. And he's shown brilliance in moments. But I feel ever since the what was it called last year? The bubble. He hasn't been the same person before. That same swag, that swag that he has isn't there. But he's putting in the work clearly. All of his coaches always talk about that. I think he's doing all the right things. And that's the most important thing, to believe in yourself, to know that it's just a matter of time before you get out of it. That's what it goes back to. If I've ever struggled, my way of dealing with struggle is go back to put in the work. Gain your confidence back in practice. You're missing a jump shot, go take 1 billion jump shots until 1 billion of them fall. Yeah. And then you see the ball going in the net. And then in practice, and then eventually you have to believe in games, it's going to happen. You just got to do it without thinking about it. Once you think, that's
right. Yeah.
All sports, any type of athletics, once you start thinking, you're in big trouble. It has to come naturally, instinctually for athletes. So for him, I think it will. And he's too good not to bounce back from that and to become the player that we know that he can be.
Yeah. And I think Owais has talked about that a few times, where in terms of that idea of having it come naturally and not thinking about it, a lot of times you see Pascal get past the ball, especially, on top of the key at the post and the elbow. And it's almost like he takes that like second or two to get himself going as to, okay, what do I want to do here? Right. It's like he holds it, looks around, and then he's going about it. It's a little bit different than what we've kind of been used to. I'm going back to, the year that he had in which we won the championship, obviously, had an incredible first finals, 20-10, 50%, hit the game winner in the final, final game 6 to put it over. It was just a way of going about it. And I mean, speaking of game winners, I don't have that video here with me, but I know T had posted one a while back. Which league was that where you had that put back game winner to go ahead, put it up? And I know Kevin and them play in the same one.
That was a Ball 905, a league run out of local Peel League. We've been playing it for many years. We've won it a few times. And yeah, I was just fortunate enough that day that, my teammate made an amazing pass. It was crazy. He was surrounded. Everybody was watching. It's typical of basketball. You're always watching the ball. And him and I, having played at Sheridan, we know what are the rules. It's always look to go back door. If someone is closely guarding you, someone is sleeping, you always go back door. True. So I did what I had to do instinctually. I just went back door, and he made an amazing pass. I mean, he's an all-Canadian player, and he went around the defense, had a bunch of people in him, made a beautiful pass, and I was lucky enough to make the second one, not the first one.
There you go. Well, no, that was what was the Moses Malone thing, right? You're stuffing your stats. You just want to get the rebound on top of the game winner. It's just how it is.
But I'll tell you something about Pascal. I'll add. I think that one of the things with Pascal is that he's also being scouted more than he's ever been scouted before. When the championship year, you had Danny Green, you had Kawhi, you had Marc Gasol, you had Ibaka. Think about losing all those pieces one by one, and now more and more attention is being focused on you. Now, yes, Fred VanVleet has gotten better and better, but more teams are keying in on him. They know his tendencies, and he can be a little one-dimensional at times. So I think that's another thing he's suffering from, is that teams just know him and scout him better. they know these scouting books are insane about. They know all your tendencies, where you want to catch it. When you catch it here, you're going to go this way. If you dribble with this hand, you're going to most likely shoot or keep dribbling or pass it. They know all these things.
Yeah.
I think he's also adjusting to being that number one player and a player that's getting all that attention. So hopefully he can develop into that, Batman type player.
Yeah, then, I mean, in my mind, to me, Pascal doesn't necessarily need to be that kind of guy. And I think it's just one of those scenarios where it's almost as if we're force feeding him to try and become that and trying to see if that is his ceiling. But to me, he's just the kind of guy who's just the ultimate second option to have on any sort of, top end team. He's just incredible in transition and in the prototype big guy that you want, who can also switch to guard on the perimeter. And then it's just one of those things where, if he's being able to not be that, guy that everyone is keying in on, then it allows him to be a little bit more expressive, because we saw, last year in the bubble when they were essentially force feeding him in the post, Marcus Smart, Jaylen Brown, these guys just absolutely ate him alive, because they, as you said, they knew his tendency was to spin that one way. He isn't great at necessarily protecting the ball when he's going up, so it allows him to get stripped a lot of times. He's gotten better at that this year, but it's just, to me, one of those things where, like, maybe there's still more ceiling to be discovered from that perspective, because, as Owais said, he's only been playing professional basketball for about 8 years now, so he still has more room to develop. He's still young enough to do it, but, as Kevin, who's on here, says, it's a development year, so definitely Pascal is getting a lot of development opportunity, and he's 0-3 so far, so I'm hoping the next one's the charm.
That's all fault. It always comes down to something like, we talk about, having situations like that come up. The more, opportunities you have to be in that situation, the more comfortable you get, right? And that goes for anything. When you're, working out, you want your muscles to get bigger, you're going to have to do a lot of repetition, right? Same with like a vegan lifestyle. You want to, feel healthier, you're going to have to make those sacrifices and put the work in, right? And you will eventually feel better. So with Pascal right now, I think there's so much emphasis on him in terms of performing that he forgets he has to simplify the game, right?
Good point.
Sometimes it's as simple as like hitting your first 2 shots at a mid-range. What happens then? Like at the high level, basketball generally becomes a game of counters. So Pascal has, some go-to moves that are very, very readable. But if he is able to understand how counters work, so, feeling a body, reading the game, reading the defender a little bit better than he is right now, and that only happens with experience and looking at film. Or getting someone in the coaching staff to be like, hey, look, this is what you should be doing in this situation. Sometimes it's also great. I always say to Harris, like if, a guy like Pascal worked out with a guy like Hakeem Olajuwon for just a week to learn like how the post game works, because he's got the fundamentals starting, like you could see it's there. He'll help you read the defenders better, right? And when that repetition goes in and he starts practicing these things, like it just becomes flawless, because then you don't have to think about it. You were talking about this just earlier. The more reps you put in, the less you think about it, and the more seamless your game becomes, right? Why is DeMar DeRozan one of the best mid-range guys in the league? Because the repetition, the experience, there was moments where DeRozan was in the same situation as Pascal right now, because they threw him into there and they're like, you're going to be our main scorer, figure it out, right? It's the same situation. And now you don't have, again, like you said, those guys like Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Kawhi Leonard, to almost shield you from like that criticism, or at least the exposure on the flaws of your game. And it's just a development time. Even with Freddie, like we were going to talk about Freddie today, and I think Harris, we should leeway into that, where I feel like Freddie is someone who isn't very good at getting the team involved, and he over dribbles too much. And this has been a constant trend with him. He's a great player. He's a great creator, but over dribbling costs us a lot. And it ends up actually forcing us to make some really ridiculous shots.
Yeah, that's fair. And I'm going to ask T to put his coaching hat on here, because as you said, he's had a lot of coaching experience, has dealt with, scenarios in which players are either not playing up to their potential, or in a scenario where potentially change could be required. So, let's put the coaching hat on. You're Nick Nurse right now for ST. Looking at this Raptors roster at the moment, first of all, I'll ask Strib, do you think change is needed? What kind of change is there? And if you were to kind of see how we've been going about it, like where do you think the fall has been for the Raptors so far?
Gee, it's a great question. I think it all comes down to what is your goal? What is your realistic expectation? What is that endpoint? And I think from there you work backwards. I think everybody understands that we're not a contender. So are we trying to become a contender? What is Masai's thinking? Is he trying to become a contender this year? Is he trying to become a contender next year, the year after? What is the long-term game plan? And you plan accordingly. Obviously, the Giannis situation was there. We were thinking about Giannis. Everyone was so excited. Boom, he signs. Like, okay, now what? So I think it comes down to first understanding what your goals are. And if this is a development year, let him play, but at least have an identity. That's another thing that I think is missing. You need to have a identity. And one of the things, being involved with Sheridan and working with, one of the most successful coaches in Sheridan in college basketball history, in Jim Flack, his whole philosophy is like, okay, we need a system. I don't care what happens. This is our identity, and we're going to play like this no matter what. Our goal is to get you to play our game, and if we play our game better than you and you're playing our game, we're going to win more games than not. So what is the identity? And you want to create that. And then everything follows. Then you just keep working backwards, right? You give roles accordingly. You train accordingly. And you need buy-in. That is the other thing that I've learned. Working behind the scenes with basketball on different levels, it's most successful teams are the ones that have buy-in. Whether it's recreation basketball, whether it's college, professional, it's that old thing of, the sum of the parts situation, right? Like you need to have everybody playing like this. And even if you're not the most talented team, if you're playing in, everybody's buying in, and it doesn't work, the coach and all of you can say, hey, we had a plan, we stuck to it, it didn't work. But if other people are not adhering to your plans, now you're scattered. You're not going to win. So.
No, that's an excellent point. And I think that buy-in is just a perfect spot to be able to talk about, why we're seeing all these scenarios in which potential trades are now, going to be happening, where people are finding that fits are not what they expect it to be. And I mean, the biggest one that has been in the news as of late has been that of Andre Drummond. And before we do get into Andre Drummond himself, what I did want to bring up here was a very interesting little tidbit that we had yesterday on an interview with Draymond Green, who has been one of, the most, I would say, exciting guys to have post-game. He has no filter whatsoever to his game. I actually think, we talk about inside the NBA, being one of those things where everyone follows. Please have Draymond Green replace Shaq in my mind as the full-time analyst. But let's take a moment to hear what he had to say, not only about the players that are potentially in trades, but just kind of the entire culture that's going around with trades at the moment.
In this league, to watch Andre Drummond before the game sit on the sideline, then go to the bat, and then come out in street clothes because a team is going to trade him is bull. Because when James Harden asked for a trade and essentially dogged it, I don't think there was no surprise or there's no one's going to fight back that James was dogging it his last days in Houston. But he was castrated for wanting to go to a different team, and everybody destroyed that man. And yet a team can come out and say, oh, we want to trade a guy, and then that guy is to go sit. And if he doesn't stay professional, then he's a cancer, and he's not good in someone's locker room, and he's the issue. And we've seen situations of Harrison Barnes getting pulled off the bench. DeMarcus Cousins finding out that he's traded in an interview after the All-Star game. And we continue to let this happen. But I got fined for stating my opinion of what I thought should happen with another player. But teams can come out and continue to say, oh, we're trading guys, we're not playing you. And yet we're to stay professional. At some point, as players, we need to be treated with the same respect and have the same rights that the team can have. Because as a player, you're the worst person in the world when you want a different situation. But a team can say they're trading you, and that man is to stay in shape. He is to stay professional. And if not, his career is on the line. At some point, this league has to protect the players from embarrassment like that. You know, we talk all of this stuff about you can't do this, you can't say that publicly. If you say that publicly, you're fine. Anthony Davis got fined, I think, $100,000 or something like that for demanding a trade publicly.
So obviously, you know, a lot of fire that came with that. And I mean, as much as you know, first of all, it's a business, so a team is always looking to be in its best interest, not only for the people that are on the floor, but for locker room fits, all of that. But I mean, to me, I don't think Draymond said anything wrong there. It's definitely a situation where it almost feels like a bit of a power imbalance. And I mean, you know, what do you guys think? I mean, to me, it was just straight facts.
Tahir.
Oh man, I love Draymond. First of all, I think he's going to be amazing in the media afterwards. Okay, so now just watching it again for like the third or fourth time, I think he made some great points, but he was a little scattered. He was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
This or that, and this player this, and he's mixing up a lot of different messages. And yeah, let me elaborate. The low hanging fruit is it's not the owners who are vilifying you; it's the media or perception. That's the public. That's how the public reacts naturally. You know, the public gets a little bit more upset when a player wants out because they see it as disloyalty. That's just the way perception are. You can't blame the league or the owners for that. So that's one. NBA is probably one of the best league when it comes to that balance of players and owners. They've actually done a great job. You want to see imbalance? Go look at the NFL. It's crazy. They have no rights. And the NBA players have negotiated that. So if you're unhappy about some of these things, you need to negotiate them. What Anthony Davis did was not correct because it went against the collective bargaining agreement. So Draymond Green, if you want to be the future president of the NBA Players Association, as Kevin just suggested, you need to know the rules. You need to know what's in your contract. So that's in there. Not to say, you know, what they're doing is nice, but this is a business. When you're a free agent, when Kawhi left, was that nice? It sucked. Right? But those were his rights agreed upon in the collective bargaining agreement. He has earned the right to go choose the best situation for him. And while a player is under contract, it is within the contractual obligations or stipulation that they can be traded at any time. And, you know, what's to say Andre Drummond didn't agree to that, you know, to say, hey, you know what? Yeah, I want to get traded. There's no point in me getting hurt. So we don't know all the ins and outs, but I understand the point he's making. But I don't want to have an overreaction, a hot take. Oh, yeah, he's right, man. Owners this, owners that. I'm not pro-owners. I'm definitely more pro-players. But there has to be a balance, and you have to know the contract. Negotiate it.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with both of you guys. I think ultimately the league is something that has changed dramatically based off of, you know, what we used to see in the 90s and the 2000s. In terms of the loyalty, and it just comes down to players wanting the best for their careers. Like when you're in a job, your normal job, and you don't like the way that you're being handled or used, you know, you go to HR, you go to your manager, you talk to them, and you're like, hey, this is what I need. I don't think I'm being used the best that I feel like I can. And if it doesn't work out, you would want to go to another job. And it's not any different over here in the NBA. And we shouldn't be as, you know, discriminatory. And I can get and empathize from a player's perspective because they get the most amount of garbage because they have to read, like you said, the media. They have to also, you know, they're also restricted by the guidelines based off of what you just said, the contracts, the locker room. Sometimes, you know, even athletes are susceptible to almost taking in and consuming that media and then taking it out on the team. Right. And then that's where locker room issues happen. Right. So there's so much more involved, and being an athlete is not easy for your mental health, if even. Right. So Draymond's got a point in that respect. Yeah. And, you know, finding that balance is always difficult because sometimes you need someone to speak out in order for change to happen. So if more change is needed, if, you know, let's say, for example, a particular team like, you know, Cleveland has been not as great to the players as, the players would like, that's an issue, right? And same with
great is an understatement given Cleveland's front office past.
of course, but then you also look at the way that DeMar DeRozan's situation was handled, right? That's another situation where a player comes out disgruntled because somewhere down the line someone messed up, but the blame always ends up going to the player, unfortunately. And you can say a lot of things about management, but there's so many pieces to management, and most of your fan base doesn't care about management as much. It's more about the players, and it's always the players' fault. So I can understand where they're coming from, and it's embarrassing to just come into a game being told you're traded and having to sit out a game. You know what I mean? It's embarrassing. It's not fun. And then
open communication in both ways is always going to be the best path. And sometimes, look, there's never an easy decision when you're, for instance, moving a DeMar DeRozan, a guy who the fans absolutely love, who has shown that loyalty that everyone speaks about with regards to an organization, being that guy who re-signed. But at the same time, look, it was the right call to make because it led to the franchise's first championship. But it's just a tough situation where sometimes there's no winners. But speaking of change, though, so now that we are having this kind of situation where, a Blake Griffin, an Andre Drummond, a John Collins, all these guys who are, first of all, big men, a place that the Raptors are sorely lacking. But in general, these are guys who either are or have been star players in this league that are either now undervalued or that because of either it be an injury history, a perceived lack of discipline, all of these things that have somehow now put these guys on there. So T, you as a coach here and as the Raptors looking for a potential upgrade as far as their front court is concerned, are any of those guys, first of all, of interest to you? Secondly, who are you really willing to give up to get that?
It's a great question. And we've talked about this privately off wax also about, which direction the Raptors should go in. Clearly they need a big man. They're really struggling in that, in that department. Giannis is off the table. You're left with, you can only choose from the choices you're given, right? And sometimes none of them are great and you have to choose the best because, the best of the worst, but that best still may be better than what you have. It's all about perspective here. Aaron Baines, Alex Len, oh gosh. John Collins, if he's available, I would definitely be looking at that. That, he is skilled. He is a monster. I think he has way more upside than Andre Drummond. So limited offensively, but he's a stat monster. He'll get you some steals and blocks and rebounds. He'll clean up that glass for you, and he solidifies your inside compared to what else is available. That's the thing. It's all about what's available and what your plan is. I'm sure Masai and Bobby Webster have worked through every single scenario and have charts all over. Who can we get this summer? Who's available? Who's coming out of contract next year? Kyle Lowry. He has maybe 2 years left max of this prime Kyle Lowry max. He's not
like wine. He'll be great. He ages like wine. Don't worry about it.
He's not that crazy athlete, that's gonna like a LeBron. So eventually he's gonna slow down. I love Kyle, of course. So do you want to contend with Kyle Lowry? Do you want to keep this ball rolling? Fred VanVleet has gone up a level, a notch. Okay, Pascal's there. So based on that, do you want to wait a little bit or do you want to go strike again now? And if you want to go now, then you only have a couple of options and a couple of sellers, right? There's a lot of other big men, but they're on teams that are buyers or teams that are looking to contend. Jared Allen would have been a great person to get somehow, but that's the Cleveland future now. So what are the options? What do you guys think?
Yeah, and you kind of pointed out to the fact that first of all, I'll be completely honest here. I want nothing to do with Andre Drummond. Just on a personal level, I just don't like what he brings to the basketball court just because of the fact that every team that he has been on, it's almost as if he is just adamant on being a focal point of the offense. He's not the kind of guy that I can expect to be like a Clint Capella for us, right? Do the rim running that we need, get the boards. He is a guy who needs the ball in his hand just because even if he's no good with it, and I could put it out in stats, just think about it right now, this year, he goes into the post 6 times a game. 6 times, and he is in the 5th percentile in terms of scoring in the post. 0.8 points of possession every time he goes into the post, and he's just absolutely adamant on getting into it, right? And it's why Cleveland was clearly just like, dude, because I actually, and I've said this to Owais, and I've said this on a previous podcast, I think that Cleveland team, first of all, has tons and tons of young talent. Secondly, that actually has an opportunity to be in the playoffs this year, just because of not only the dynamic backcourt that they have, obviously with the Jared Allen upgrade that they have as well, but at the same time, they just have so many versatile pieces, Larry Nance, Taurean Prince, like all of these guys that can actually be very solid guys, not only in terms of giving you solid minutes, but also when it comes down to playoffs, these guys have experience to be able to do the damage that's there. So to me, they're a very pesky out. I do think they'll make it in, but an Andre Drummond just doesn't fit there. And I mean, it's almost like a catch-22, because clearly he is one of the best rebounders in the game. There is no two ways about that. He has led the rebounding in the league 3 to 4 times in his career. He has been in the all defensive team once. So it's just one of those things where it's like, dude, you obviously have value, but can it get through here so that you can get that same product on the floor? And I mean, as much as Masai has been almost a wizard at taking some of these guys that have had a history of coaching problems, I mean, Kyle Lowry is top of that list. I mean, part of the reason why he was thrown out of Memphis, thrown out of Houston, despite definitely being the more talented point guard out of the options that were there, was because he just didn't kind of fit with the culture or fit with how things were run. And, to Masai's credit, to our coaching staff's credit, we were able to turn it around, and now we have him as the greatest Raptor of all time. I just don't know if Andre Drummond, who himself is a free agent next year, is the kind of guy we want to jump in on and hope that we can turn his culture around like that to make it fit with what we do.
Very fair point. Yeah, I can't argue that. In all honesty, it's a big question mark. I've always been of the opinion, I don't know how you feel, Owais, but I love a Masai, and I trusted him. I trusted Masai to, hit it out of the park at least 8 out of 10 times. Mm-hmm. Our culture is, an established culture. Maybe he does buy in. But if John Collins is available, I'm not thinking about Andre Drummond, but it's all about the price, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Going to be a free.
Atlanta said they want a high lottery pick, which means that we're going to have to be in a 3-team trade to be able to get John Collins there. And I mean, no doubt that's going to mean that we're likely moving either Norm or OG or potentially even Kyle, depending on the situation. But I don't know. Like, I know Norm is one of those, like, the hot trade piece that's going to be in on this, but I just don't know. I just don't know if I want to move him when there's the potential of getting, if you want an Andre Drummond, go get him on free agency for much cheaper than you could get him now. And why give away your best 3-point shooter this year, as well as a guy who's become just such a consistent offensive option for you?
Absolutely. I mean, even if you look at the way the Raptors are built right now, the only difference between last year and this year, in my opinion, is the fact that we've just downgraded our bigs. Aaron Baines is not necessarily as mobile and as great defensively as a guy like Ibaka. Now, why I think Drummond would work if we were able to jump the gun on him this year, or this particular season off of some trade, is the defensive presence that he brings the Toronto Raptors, which is essentially what we've been missing, because then it gives guys like Pascal more of a perimeter sort of role, or Boucher can even kind of hit the perimeter a little bit more and not have to focus on trying to get, bullied inside, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it opens up the defensive end a lot more for the Raptors and cleanup duty on the offensive end for the Raptors. But if he buys into it, and again, if Masai was so great at convincing a guy like Kyle Lowry to change his career to become a 6-time All-Star, what makes you think that he won't have that same sort of conversation with a guy like Drummond and change his career around as well? And honestly, if you look at a guy like Drummond, like, tell me when Detroit's ever been one of those teams where, you expect them to be great, apart from like their 05, was it 05 or 03? I can't remember. Whenever they were.
When they won, they won conference finals 05. They were perennial then, but.
Right. And since then, when has Detroit ever been a team where you're like thinking, oh, great team, greatly coached, or this or that? No, they haven't been. And then you look at the Cleveland Cavaliers, outside of LeBron, let's be honest, like, what success has this team had, right? So you're talking about two teams that have horrible cultures, and you're coming into a team that created a culture of winning. How would that not excite a player, right? So for me, I think if you bring a guy like that in, and it's an immediate upgrade. No matter how stupid he plays, no matter how bad his offensive IQ, the defensive IQ and that presence inside will change a lot of things. And let's say we keep Maines in that sort of trade, whatever the situation is, you can have at least a guy in the back burner, and having Baines come off the bench might be actually great for him, because at that point you could even try to make him a focal point, because there's not many guys on the bench on other teams that can, kind of play with his size. So I don't know. I think if the stars align, why not? That's what I say. John Collins, is he a better option? Yes.
Of course.
Viable? Like, do you think it's going to happen? Probably not. But if the Raptors stay the same, it's just a development. It's a development year. That's it.
Yep. And as I said, that's our favorite friend Kevin's thing, right? Development. It's all about keep fighting, and absolutely, right? We definitely want to be in that playoff hunt, continue to get experience for these guys, continue to put them in situations where they're uncomfortable, they're able to really show that they have what it takes to be able to get past that level, and really figure out what their ceilings are, because that's how you're going to figure out what you're going to do in the long term.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, what was my apologies.
No. I was just going to say, Drummond also has a much bigger contract, I'm pretty sure, than John Collins. John Collins has a rookie contract?
Yeah, no, he did have an extension that was signed, but it's still less than what Drummond was paid, which was like $28 million a year. I think John Collins
too. And that's another thing. So if you have to match salaries, that means you have to start throwing in some more pieces. If you're at that point now, I'm looking. If I have to already give up all these pieces, I'm looking to divert resources and trying to get John Collins. And this is where I also, Harris, if you remember over the summer, I was talking about one of the things I didn't like about what Masai did was we've given away all these players and lost them and created no trade exceptions. There's a lot of silent trades happening. Like Boston got rid of Gordon Hayward, had a huge trade exception. If we had a trade exception right now, that would help us so much to absorb some of these contracts and not give up the pieces.
Yeah.
Maybe throw in a low first round pick and trade exception. Okay, Cleveland's happy. They got something for him.
Yeah.
That's the part that sucks also. But let's see. In Masai, we trust.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a in between a rock and a hard place situation, right? Because I think they were I think they legitimately, first of all, believed that they could have gotten Kawhi back, first of all. So they didn't really do anything. Like, it wasn't a scenario where we were like, all right, he's not coming back, so let's move him like right at that point, right? Obviously, because the playoffs happened and we won that. But that was there. And then I think the Ibaka and Gasol situation was very much the same as well, where they were like, okay, if everything else kind of works out, or if we have, the room for Giannis, all of that stuff, we could still get these guys back. But obviously Ibaka decided that he would go take his chances at the Clippers. And it's just one of those where you're kind of left holding the bag, and in a way where now recovering from that, and that's going to, take a year or two to get back from.
Yep.
But in that short term, what we do have tonight is a game going up against the Milwaukee Bucks for the Toronto Raptors, which is obviously going to be an absolute, just grinder, first of all, because Giannis just absolutely mauls us on the inside, and it's going to be even more so given our size. But given the game has just started, and in fact, the Raps have an early 5-point lead, leading 18-13, what do you guys think are the keys for us to be able to pull off the upset?
Well, you can't protect the paint. We know this. But if you're able to get to Giannis a little bit early and force him on the outside and try to dribble the ball more than anything, I think you're in a good spot, because right now I think Drew Holiday is not playing because of COVID regulations and safety protocols. So that's a huge bonus for us, because then a guy like DJ Augustine or DiVincenzo have to play extended minutes. And that's a perfect opportunity for us to almost destroy any momentum that Giannis could make or Middleton can make, right? But given just how we've been performing, I think this game the Raptors come back hot. And I think that's part of the identity that remained from, over the years. We're always going to fight till the end. Sometimes we might lose a few games, but when the big teams come and we got to face those, those contenders, we kick ass. And it's always really fun to watch.
Yeah. T, playing up to the opposition and playing down to the opposition, eh?
Yeah. I mean, Giannis is going to get his. It's all about trying to make sure you limit the amount of damage he does inside to a strong suit, right? Try to make him, be a distributor. Try to make him shoot, but don't give up letting him kill you, and also letting him facilitate and getting, letting them bomb away from outside. Pick one thing and stick to that, right? Don't let them shoot away from outside, because they can get hot. They do have some shooters also.
Fair.
Don't let Middleton get going and Giannis get going.
Or DJ Augustine get going.
Raptor killer.
So, we get that San Antonio X-Man coming to kill us. So
Yeah.
Things. And he looks like a pirate. I can't get it out of my mind. Every time I look at him, I'm just waiting for him to put an eye patch on, and he looks like he fit in Pirates of the Caribbean.
You have a weird mind.
Look,
I don't know why you have to say that. Just why?
Well, a weird mind is sometimes what's needed to get that creativity, because it may not just be me. Apparently, you are being equated to Bill Nye the Science Guy. So we're talking about weirdos.
Well, I know the science of basketball, baby. That's what I know.
Well,
no, I'm not related. But if I was, if anything, he's related to me. It's different. Okay.
Well, did
Bill
you know
Nye
that?
is the man? All right. So I have to take that as a compliment, Owais.
I do.
As a compliment. He is the man.
I grew up with the
I watched him as a kid. Okay,
Yeah.
do all these little nerdy science shows. And then, I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff in the last few years. He drops F-bombs and just goes at people now. Like, he goes hard at people.
Yeah, he's become savage now. It's he's basically attacking people, who don't go with global, the climate change, all of that. Just kind of like really bringing the science into it. It's like, come on, guys, like this is beyond a debate at this point. And the fact that it's still happening, even at the judicial level, at the constitutional level, it's like, come on, man, like get with the program, get it going. But speaking of the program, we are coming to the end of this episode of the Swing Podcast. Once again, I want to thank Tahir very much for taking the time out to come join with us.
Hey, thank you guys.
Absolutely. And
Good job, man. Keep it up.
Yeah, and as we said earlier on, Offbeat Life, which is his passion project that he runs with his wife, make sure to follow them on Instagram at Offbeat Life. Take care. That beat is like beetroot, B-E-E-T. I see that on words. And the link was also put into our comments, which once again has the entire guide, everything to get started on vegan living, healthier lifestyle. But with that, we're going to go watch the Milwaukee Bucks game. As always, Owais and I are going to be on Instagram live after to talk about the post-game reaction, how, we were able to pull off the upset, how the game went and how it all did. But until then, this is that HK, that's that guy Owais, that's T, and we will see you at the next one. Take care.